My name is Felipe Avila. I am the compliance reviewer for the Wisconsin Historical Society, and I'm going to be talking today about historic preservation for BEAD projects in Wisconsin. So to get started a little bit, historic preservation and public works. Wisconsin has a rich and unique past. People have been living here for about the last 12,000 years, and there's evidence of their activities all around us. Preserving and protecting the history is not just a nice thing to do, it's legally mandated. There's a number of laws that come into play, both federal and state. So what is a historic site or feature? It can be a building, it can be pre-contact, so before Europeans came to this continent. It can be a landscape or an area where something significant has happened. So in these pictures, I have a couple of examples. The building on the upper right, it's the Red Gym on the UW-Madison campus. Really cool old looking building. It was built around 1900. That is, and it's a very unique looking building. It has some interesting history. It used to be the ROTC Center. It had a gym at one point. So that is what we would consider a historic building. Down on the lower right, you see there is what's left of an old pre-contact structure. It was like, think about an igloo or a wigwam, something like that. That's the footprint that's left. This was found on a road construction project in Middleton, Wisconsin. There's only been about 12 keyhole structures found in the entire state, so when you find one, it's kind of a big deal. On the lower left, what you see here is that black and white photo. That is from a POW camp in Columbus, Wisconsin. World War II, obviously a major significant historical event. Prisoners that were captured from North Africa, from the German army, they were sent to Wisconsin to go work in the fields and canneries. And so these guys were on their way out to the fields to go harvest beans. Again, it's a landscape where something significant has happened. With all that said, not all sites are created equal. A few stone ships found in a cornfield is not the same as a Native American pre-contact village. An old house has been renovated, recited, added onto, is not the same as an original, preserved, unique building or feature. A historic preservation consultant or specialist can help provide you with assistance in determining what is significant. And so we highly, highly encourage people that are going to be bidding on these projects to hire a preservation specialist to help you out. In these pictures here, we have on the upper right a prairie style or Frank Lloyd Wright style house, really well maintained, looks very original. On the left, you see an older house that has a very modern addition to it. Again, the house on the left, yes, it's mostly in good shape, but that addition changes things a little bit, and that's something that we would look at. So what do the laws mandate that we have to deal with? So for the federal law, which is also called Section 106, it requires that federal agencies consider the effects on a historic property for any undertaking which the agency provides funds, permits, licenses, or which crosses federal property. State law requires that any state agency, state funded, or state permitted project considers the impact on listed properties. So the big difference between those two is listed, and we'll get into those details in a little bit. Political subdivisions, municipalities, school boards, again, they're listed. Then we have the state burial law that identifies and protects burials from disturbance. And some communities will have local ordinances where they'll vary on what they protect and allow. For BEAD projects, the Wisconsin PSC, Public Service Commission, is distributing the funds and awarding the contracts, but the money is coming from the federal government. So therefore, BEAD projects will follow federal Section 106 requirements. Federal 106 does not have any language on burial protections, and because of that, Wisconsin 15770, the state burial law, is also going to be required to be followed. So this is where the details come into play. The impact on known historic sites and the potential impact on unknown sites need to be considered. So it's not just what we know about out there, it's what you might be affecting with your work. All known burial sites, marked and unmarked, pre and post contact, so before Europeans were here and after Europeans were here, cannot be intentionally disturbed without authorization from Wisconsin SHPO, which stands for State Historic Preservation Office, and that's where I work. So how are you going to manage the laws in construction? You're going to need to take into account the potential costs for historic preservation when making your bid, have a plan in place or a consultant lined up in case you run into issues. So basically what that means is plan ahead in the concept stage, in the design stage, use the resources of the Historical Society or use a consultant to help you out with that. You need to be flexible in the office when you're doing the design, in the field when you might run into things. Nothing ever goes perfect in construction, you all know this, but you need to be ready to adjust for unexpected finds, things that pop up out of the blue. So listed properties or avoiding the known. The Historical Society has a database that maintains a list of known archaeological sites, buildings, burial sites, and other historic features. We also maintain a list of National Register districts and National Historic Landmarks in Wisconsin. These databases are known as the Archaeological Site Index, or ASI, that includes burial sites and cemeteries. The Architecture and History Index, or the AHI, which is basically buildings and other stuff. And then we have National Register districts as well. If you see a listed property or feature, maintain that database that's available for historic preservation professionals, planners, and designers. The information is considered sensitive and it's restricted from the public. We have had issues in the past where they find out about, say, an archaeological site, they'll go and they'll start digging around, poking around, looking for arrowheads, things like that. There have been cases where people will find old abandoned buildings and they will go in there looking for antique furnishings, old growth wood molding, clawtooth bathtubs, things like that. We don't want people doing that, so that's why we restrict the data. The Wisconsin Historic Preservation Database, or WIPT, is an online tool that's available for a short-term or annual subscription, and we have a free viewer here at the Society headquarters building in Madison. If you like maps, we have GIS data too. So shapefiles for archaeology, buildings, burials, National Register districts, and previously surveyed areas. Those previously surveyed areas can help save you time and money when you know how to use them. Public agencies have data costs reduced by 50%, and then one-time data sets or subscriptions are available if you're going to be working in an area long term. The question we get a lot is, why do we charge for the data and access? So the Historical Society is a little different. We can't charge for compliance reviews. So to help fund our program and the databases that we maintain, we charge for cost recovery fees for the data. And all that money gets plowed back into the database and to hire people to actually do the project reviews for you. If you go with a qualified consultant to help you out with the historic preservation, they may already have access to these databases. Ask ahead of time so you don't end up paying for something twice. Right? How do you consider the impact on unknown sites? This is where your consultant will make their money. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at the potential for sites in the area. Are there other sites around the terrain, water sources, other resources? This includes buildings over 50 years old. You're going to look and see if the area was surveyed before. That's the archaeological survey data I talked about earlier. You may have to survey when needed. So if you're in a high potential area that's relatively undisturbed, you might have to look and see if there's something in the way. The entire project quarter does not necessarily need to be surveyed, but you need to be ready to explain why it doesn't need to be surveyed. This is where a consultant would be helpful. So if you have a 10-mile stretch of road that you want to lay down some fiber optic, you don't necessarily have to do a phase one survey for that entire 10 miles, but you have to explain why you don't need to do it. And again, having the consultation professional to help you out will make that a lot easier. So what do you do when there is a potential impact on a site? The short answer is a little research and some paperwork. You'll need to determine if the project will directly impact the historical site. Does the road go through it? Will the building be torn down? Does it change the character of the site? Basically, you're going to put a big old satellite dish on the roof of a historic building, something like that. You'll need to determine if the site is significant. That is, does it meet the criteria for eligibility to the National Register of Historic Places or listing in the state register? If you're not sure or you cannot make this determination, that's where your consultant will help. So in this picture right here, what we have is a LiDAR image. You can kind of see the road cutting through in between the ridges. Up here on the north side of the road, there's a group of four burial mounds, prehistoric mounds, very unique bird effigies. Those are really rare. If you're running your fiber optic through here, what we would tell you to do is you need to stay within the road cut. You can't get up on top of the ridge where the mounds are. And we would highly suggest that you move to the south side of that road to potentially minimize any impact that you have on there. We would probably require a monitor to be out there for you to make sure that you're not finding anything as a project takes place. This is an area where you could have a potential impact on a site. So if there is an impact on the site, then or a burial site, then then we need to look at this. To start the review process, you're going to provide the documentation, plans, photos, maps, and submit it to compliance at wisconsinhistory.org. So for these projects, it's going to be a little bit different. All your information is going to go to the PSC, and the PSC is going to send it to us. But it's once we get our hands on it, then the review process is basically going to be the same for whether you submit it independently or if it comes to us from the PSC. Once we get the project and we say, yes, we've received it, we have 30 days to complete the review. So if you're in a hurry, make sure you get the paperwork in ahead of time with at least that 30 days to keep the timeline. So things you want to think about when you were looking at a project. Can the site be avoided by going on the other side of the road? You're laying down fiber optic. There's a site on the east side of the road. Can you switch to the other side of the road? Just avoid it completely. If you're running a service to a home, can it be installed without visible impact to the building, like piggybacking on an existing overhead line or undergrounding it? If you're using satellite dishes and things like that, can you place the satellite dish so it's not visible from the road? When you're working within the right of way, does not necessarily mean the area is disturbed. How deep the base course is for the road, how deep the fiber optic is being installed. Um, Features can survive under roadbeds and in built-out areas, and I'll show you an example of that in a little bit. You also need to know what you're working with. If you're working near burials, make sure the consultant is qualified to work with human remains. If dealing with buildings, you need an architecture specialist. Some companies will have all the people you need. Some companies only specialize in one or two areas. So when you hire a consultant, make sure that you're hiring someone that can do the job, can do all parts of the job for you, not just archaeology, but you have to think about burials, not just archaeology in general. You also have to think about buildings. Make sure you're hiring someone that can do it all. So planning ahead and design. So we're going to give you a couple examples now of projects that we've looked at in the last year or two and how they kind of relate to what we're going to be doing with BEAD projects. So this first example is the Reedsburg broadband project. The city of Reedsburg has a utility and they decided to run fiber optic to their service area. This meant about 600 road miles of fiber optic, and that had a potential impact on 250 archaeological sites, 20 National Register historic homes, and 3 National Register districts. So it's a lot to deal with. What they did was they hired a consultant to identify the potential conflicts. That came to us and we reviewed it, came back with suggestions, design changes, things like that, how to avoid certain areas. We were able to complete this complete the review within 30 days by being organized, communicating with the engineers, the contractors who are doing the work in the city, and by being flexible. So in this photo, you can see that yellow line is the path that they want to take for their fiber optic. You can see it's going through this orange blob, which is an archaeological site. So with that original alignment, it was in conflict with SK-0594, which was a bird effigy mound burial site. So you're having archaeology and it's a burial site, so that's not a good thing to try to get work in. But the site boundaries were not accurate due to poor known records. So we knew that there was something in the area. We just didn't quite have the area pinned down really well, and we're going off records that were originally created in 1850. So what we did was we did a little research, and what we found was the person who did that first site report in 1850 actually drew a sketch map of it, which is the image in the top right. And so you can see you've got a bird mound right there. We did a little more research and we actually pulled out the 1937 historic air photos. And if you look at the air photo, you can see the shadow of that mound that's still there. So there's the wings, there's the body. Look at the north arrow on the sketch map. It all lines up. So this is the site that we're worried about. With the site pinned down, we were able to say, hey, if you move to the other side of the road, you're going to be in the ditch line, you're going to be okay. You won't need to monitor this area. What that enabled them to do was a little bit of research and a little bit of tweaking of their design meant that they didn't have to monitor 1,000 feet of right of way, which is a significant cost savings when you don't have to pay someone to be out there while you're doing your work. This is how the laws can be actually be helpful for you to save you a little bit of money. So why do we monitor? Um, it's really easy to think that if it's in right of way or if it's in an area that's already been built out, it's been disturbed, there's like no way that nothing can survive. Well, what we found over the years is that things do survive under roads, um, especially older roads where they just kind of scab something on and just start stacking from there. We find features that survive underground, buried under fill, buried um, under homes, under areas that have been developed, where those features do survive, and then they're found during construction projects. So this is an example from a house in Wilpacket County. They're just running underground and electric to one of these houses over here. Obviously, it's a developed area. It's been disturbed. It's been graded. The basements, all that stuff. But there was an archaeological site in the area, and it had a burial component to it. So what we did was that we required them. They had to fill out the paperwork. We said that you could go ahead and do the work, but you need to have a monitor out there just in case. And while they were monitoring, they found was this feature. So they cut in the trench to put in the line. That stain right there, that black stain in the dirt, that's an archaeological feature. We don't know exactly what it was because once they found it, they tried to avoid it as much as possible. It looks like they just nicked it, just caught the edge of it. When they did this, when they were screening the area that did get disturbed, what they found was this little copper, worked piece of copper in there. So the copper culture in Wisconsin goes back from about 4000 BC to 1000 BC. That small worked piece, probably um, a personal ornament, or something that someone just carried around with them, either as jewelry or as good luck piece or something like that. And it's roughly 3,000 to 4,000 years old. So that feature stayed down there, and that little piece of copper has been down there for the last 3,000 odd years. And it was just found by running a line through a trench. That's why we monitor. Sometimes you find stuff, and that's why we want to have people aware of what's potentially out there, what we need to look out for. This is what we're looking for when we're trying to protect resources in relation to historical preservation. Again, we're not going to stop your work, we're not going to stop your projects, but there is a process to follow, and we want to try and preserve as much as we can while allowing development to take place. So what do you do if you find bones or artifacts? Don't panic. It happens. It happens more than you think. What you need to determine is, are the bones human or animal? And if you are not sure, then you stop work. Just stop working. Call the local police or sheriff department for bones, and or your consultant or us for the artifacts. If you're working with a known burial site, or if you got a permit from SHPO, call our office, and this is a number that you want to talk to. That's 24/7. Someone will answer that phone. If you find remains, stop, let us know, and we will help you get through it. So this last slide is just web links for more information. We've got guidance on the process. You're going to want to look for you're going to look at federal. We have forms, paperwork that you're going to fill out when you do these applications and when you start doing bids. If you need the information on sites that we have, that's the WIP data. If you're looking for consultants, if you decide you don't want to deal with this, you want to hire someone else to take care of it for you, we have lists of consultants who can do the work, and that's this link right here. And finally, we have the laws that's going to talk about what you're getting into when you have to deal with laws, with historic preservation laws with construction. If you have questions or if you are not sure about anything that we talked about, feel free to reach out to me. Here's my contact information. We're happy to answer questions. If I can't answer them, we'll find someone who can. And again, don't be shy. We're here to help you out. We're here to help you manage the process, and we will get you going with everything that you need to make a bid and to start winning projects for you to build. And thank you for your time.